Maaabot lahat ng iyong inaasam. Kasipagan ng sagot, salat ka man sa kayamanan. Buksan ang pahina ng mga aklat ng karunungan. Edukasyon ating kailangan, kamamangan ating iwanan. Please!
Ating lilipalin, ating papawin,
ating tanawin,
bagong pag-asa ay muling tatanawin.
kinabukasan pagbibayin, pilitin mong gawin.
Puspos ang pagsisikap,
Pag-asa ay yakapin. Edukasyon ang kayamanan ng kahit ninuman. Isang pangarap ang tutupad, pagsisikapan ng lahat.
puspos ang pagsisikap,
Kaya mo yun, kaibigan.
mabubuo isang pangarap.
Let us now begin our program by singing the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 5th National Climate Change Conference. I'm Loveland Valdez from the Batac National High School of the Schools Division of the City of Batac Region 1.
And I am John Eric Sulit from Calugtubuan Senior High School, San Juan East District, Region 4A, Calabarzon, Batangas Province. This year, the Department of Education, through the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, or DRRMS, presents the theme, Reinforcing the Youth's Role on Stewardship of Biodiversity for Climate Stability.
We are here because we believe that young people like you have the power to make a big difference in protecting our planet and its biodiversity.
To all our viewers throughout the Philippines, we encourage you to please share these live streams to others so that more people can join in this important discussion.
We also encourage you to type any questions to our speakers or thoughts you want to share in the comment box below. Please include your name, office or school, and division along with your comments or questions. We look forward to hearing from you.
Before everything else, let us slow down and center ourselves so that we're ready for all the activities ahead of us.
Maraming masyadong nangyayari at mabilis ang panahon. Kaya kumalma at sumabay sa ating breathing exercise. Ihanda na ang ating mga sarili. Humanap ng tahimik na lugar, umupo ng tuwid, at panandaliang huminto upang bigyang pansin ng paghinga. Sabayan niyo ako at ang araw sa pag-inhale at exhale. Tandaan, inhale sa ilong at exhale naman sa bibig. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Kamusta ang inyong pakiramdam? Sana na-relax kayo. Laging tandaan, alagaan at mahalin ang sarili.
That was helpful. When we practice mindfulness in everything we do, we can make more positive changes in ourselves and in the world.
Now, To give us an overview of our conference, let us hear from the Director of DepEd Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, Director Runilda R. Co.
The regional directors, regional DRMS coordinators, school division superintendents, division DRM coordinators, school heads, school DRM coordinators, teachers, learners, and guests. A pleasant day. Since 2017, the Department of Education, through the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, has been celebrating the National Climate Change Conference to increase awareness on the importance of climate change adaptation and mitigation to the different education stakeholders, showcase SICAM good practices in the basic education sector, and provide a platform for learners to encourage climate action. Through the years, the continuing efforts of the department in fighting climate change serves as a driving force to all the participants in pursuing their passion and dedication to continue this battle towards climate action. As we celebrate the 5th National Climate Change Conference, it is an honor for me to have this opportunity to thank all of you for joining us on this journey. In this year's theme entitled Reinforcing the Youth's Role on Stewardship of Biodiversity for Climate Stability, the NCCC aims to provide a platform to elevate discussions on the impacts of climate change and human actions on biodiversity, and help the learners, personnel, and their families gain a deeper appreciation and awareness of the country's vast biodiversity. Climate change is not just an environmental crisis, but it is also a social crisis. According to the Global Climate Risk Index 2020, the Philippines is the second most vulnerable country in the world affected by climate change, despite being one of the smallest contributors to carbon dioxide emissions. The recent global report on internal displacement also reveals that over 4 million Filipinos were displaced in 2020 alone, the majority of which was due to typhoons. Further, more than 60% of the Filipino population resides in coastal areas and will be forced to move with 1 meter sea rise brought about by global warming. That equates to 60 million people having to move by the end of this century. This stark reality demands that urgent actions be taken now to avert and minimize the adverse impacts of the climate crisis. The human costs are too high not to act. Addressing these issues, the 5th NCCC would like to strengthen awareness of the role of biodiversity in climate stability among education stakeholders and increase participation of learners and DepEd personnel in climate change adaptation and mitigation interventions. The 5th NCCC continues to achieve goals toward actions on climate change through its learning sessions and different activities such as Ridge to Reef virtual field trip to be conducted by the Philippine Reef and Rainforest Conservation Foundation Incorporated, Youth Can online talk show, children's interview with experts in partnership with Climate Change Commission, Save the Children Philippines, and World Vision Development Foundation Incorporated. Interfaith Stewardship in partnership with Living Laudato Si Philippines. The Green Bit Initiative, an online environmental journalism training for school paper advisors and campus journalists completion ceremony. Kalikasan, likha at lakas ng kabataan para sa kalikasan. A theater production and climate action online training completion ceremony. Change the Current, a climate action online training for adolescents completion ceremony, climate change adaptation and mitigation research hour, teachers as stewards for climate action forum, SIGA or School in a Garden, revitalizing the native trees forum with Bureau of Learner Support Services Youth Formation Division, and Stories for a Better Normal episode 72 in partnership with Climate Change Commission. Today, let us work together to empower the youth and take a step towards climate action. The National Climate Change Conference gives us the best platform right now to discuss climate change. Let us all maximize this opportunity to gain more knowledge and discover innovative solutions for a brighter future and save the world from climate change. Children will be our greatest companions in this battle. They are great learners and can be the greatest asset of society on climate action. Children have the best voices that need to be heard in fighting against climate change. As Greta Thunberg said, we are united and that we, young people, are unstoppable. The moment we decide to fulfill something, we can do anything. And today, our role is to be their confidant and their greatest support to fight against climate change. Let us equip ourselves with knowledge on this year's National Climate Change Conference. To everyone, welcome to the 5th National Climate Change Conference of the Department of Education.
Thank you, Director Ronelda Arco. It looks like it will be an exciting and inspiring conference ahead of us. We will now have a quick 5-minute break as we watch some of the biodiversity conservation and climate stability pledges you have submitted. We'll see you again shortly.
Hi, I'm Shirley B. Tuwal, teacher in charge of Kalubi Elementary School, Alaran Southwest District, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by encouraging our parents, teachers, learners, partners, and community to follow and implement the policy of proper waste segregation, no burning policy, and the campaign of clean and green environment.
Hi, I'm Aztec G. Tarian, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by using my voice and spreading awareness on climate change mitigation and conservation of biodiversity through social media platforms.
Hi, I am Eric Clay F. Padaka, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by acting as a role model in conserving energy in school and at home. I believe that by doing so, I can help reduce the emission of harmful gases, and I believe that this microway can have a macro impact if we work hand in hand.
Hi, I'm Ivy T. Manario, the grade 3 and 4 teacher of Kalubi Elementary School, Aloran Southwest District, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by helping in the campaign of clean and green environment to my parents, learners, and community.
Makakaligasang araw. Ako sa Cedric Armenides ng Baleta Integrated School ay buong pusong nangangako na tutulong upang pigilin ang tuluyang pagkasira ng ating kalikasan at ang matinding epekto ng climate change sa pamamagitan ng pangangalaga sa mga buhay sa kalupaan, mga kagubatan, mga hayop at ang kabuuan ng ating daigdig.
Hi, I'm Delia Ildumalagan, a teacher of Bakawa Elementary School, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by protecting the mangroves and help preserve the ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Prisme A. Cabrera,
and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by tree planting and recycling.
Hi, I am Adriel at Usay, a grade 2 learner of Salvador Central Elementary School, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by properly segregating of waste.
Hi, I'm Edna Ruma, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by planting flowers and fruit trees inside the school grounds to attract bees, butterflies, insects, and birds to dwell in this place.
Hi! We from Makayakan Elementary School do hereby pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by recycling, by sustainable products, drive green, protect local habitats and make wildlife welcome, go package free, composting, volunteerism, stand up and donate.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Pido, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by segregating waste materials like biodegradable and non-biodegradable. I can also influence my students to do this in their community.
Hi, I'm Esther Jalusi Mamaklay from Ilocos Norte National High School, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by promoting utilization of renewable resources. This would lead in decrease of greenhouse emissions, diversification, and conservation of energy.
Hi, I'm Julius Pajarillo, and I pledge to help in reversing biodiversity loss and climate change by volunteering in organizations in our community that are working towards the rehabilitation of our environment like tree planting and caring, Clean and Green program, coastal cleanup, and advocacy campaign to reuse, reduce, and recycle. Together,
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 Together, together,
Let's decide.
Let's decide.
let's decide.
let's decide.
Let's decide and act now.
and act now.
And act now.
Right now.
Right now!
Right now.
Welcome back. To formally open our 5th National Climate Change Conference, let us listen to a message of Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones.
Ladies and gentlemen, partners, colleagues, learners, and friends, it is a great honor for me to speak at today's National Climate Change Conference. I congratulate all the organizers for their passion and hard work in organizing the conference with so many activities and discussions on climate change. NCCC is an annual DepEd activity led by the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, or DRRMS, which started last 2017 as part of celebrating Global Warming and Climate Change Consciousness Week as declared by Proclamation number 1667, series of 208. As stated by Johann Rockstrom, the value of diversity is that it makes our ecosystems more resilient, which is a prerequisite for stable societies. Biodiversity makes Earth full of vigor and vitality and lays the foundation for human behavior and development. Protecting diversity helps protect Earth and our common homeland and contributes to humanity's sustainable development. The 5th National Climate Change Conference, under reinforcing the youth's role on stewardship of biodiversity for climate stability, has great significance. It aims to provide a platform to elevate discussions on the impacts of climate change and human actions on biodiversity, strategize participatory and concrete actions that can be done to contribute to meaningful change and to help the learners, our personnel, and their families gain a deeper appreciation and awareness of the country's vast biodiversity. Of course, it is not enough to make speeches. It is not enough to make conferences and make all the commitments that we do year in, year out for the past how many decades already. What we in the Department of Education have done is to formulate a policy which shifts over-dependence on printed material, for example, to the use of technology. We are aware that the more printed material we produce, the more we cut down trees, the more we trigger floods and natural disasters, and the more we destroy the very biodiversity that we worship every year and make speeches about and issue press conferences about. We have to translate our commitment into policy, and that is exactly what we are doing for the first time in the Department of Education. In addition to all the speeches, all the books, all the curricula, and all the praises that we have been giving or laying at the feet of biodiversity and of the environment. So, at great risk, in spite of so much criticism, we are deliberately making a pivot towards the use of technology for our studies, for our learning materials, instead of depending totally year in and year out, making speeches about biodiversity, and at the same time producing so much paper, cutting down so many trees, and triggering natural disasters. And so, man and nature need to synchronize harmony. When we take care to protect nature, nature gives us back generously. When we exploit nature ruthlessly, as we have been doing all these years with all our speeches and our poems and our songs and our contests, it punishes us without mercy, as we have been punished without mercy during the last few disasters. We need to respect and to protect nature so as to build a country with harmonious coexistence between man and nature. The COVID-19 pandemic brought devastation over global development and compounded challenges for our country. As a developing country, we face various problems on economic recovery and environmental protection. With that, we need to strengthen our solidarity to overcome these difficulties and let people across countries benefit more and in a fairer way from development outcomes, and create the safe environment that we are all dreaming and singing and writing poetry and making conferences about. Keep in mind that if we humans do not face nature, do not fail nature, nature will not fail us. Ecological civilization represents the development trend of human civilization according to us. Let us work together and shoulder our responsibility for future generations. Let us now make joint efforts to build a community to fight, not only fight through conferences and through curricula, but really in policies on education so that we'll be able to keep in control this terrible punishment of climate change. Thank you.
Surely the responsibility for advocating for our planet plans on all of us. We have to always be aware of our actions and make positive changes, to be honest.
Now, let us listen to a message by Secretary Manuel de Guzman of Climate Change Commission.
I am pleased to address you in this year's 5th National Climate Change Conference of the Department of Education in observance of the 14th Annual Global Warming and Climate Change Consciousness Week. I commend the DepEd for giving focus on the importance of our collective concern for biodiversity amid the climate emergency. Biodiversity is essential to life on Earth. It lets our ecosystems function and provide our basic needs to live and be well. Our country is blessed with rich biodiversity. Philippines has been considered one of the 18 mega biodiversity countries in the world. But the way we have lived and regarded our natural resources has threatened our biodiversity. Human activities have led to land degradation, overgrazing and deforestation, pollution, overfishing and hunting, and the overuse of fresh water, pushing our ecosystems to the limit. Our country now is one of the world's top biodiversity hotspots with a large number of species at risk of extinction. This risk of biodiversity loss is magnified by climate change. With the fast rising global temperatures, many species will not be able to adapt immediately to the changing climate. Since we depend on plants and animals, our natural ecosystems for livelihood and sustenance were all directly affected as well. Humans have only been around for 200,000 years, a tiny fraction of the 4.5 billion years of our planet's history. Yet, we have had a greater impact on Earth than any other species. We cannot let environmental degradation and biodiversity loss unabated, lest we endanger our very own survival. In 2015, the world community adopted 3 important interlocking agreements: the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, global blueprints meant to save people and planet from imminent danger and destruction. Ecosystems and biodiversity protection and climate action are among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. All nations have been called upon to reduce the degradation of natural habitats, stop the loss of biodiversity, and take urgent action to combat climate change and reduce disaster risks for a more resilient and sustainable future for all. While the government is mandated to ensure that the protection of biodiversity and our adaptation to the changing climate are integrated and mainstreamed into the development efforts, we must involve all stakeholders in our cause. Local communities, civil societies, academic institutions, and schools must play an active role in this pursuit. Education is extremely vital in our bid to protect our biodiversity and to fight climate change. Environmental awareness and protection should be well embedded in education, inculcating in our people and fostering in our youth the values and culture that promote and preserve life on Earth. Everyone has an important role to play in building resilience and pursuing sustainability. Anyone can start with adopting an attitude and lifestyle that upholds and preserves life and nurtures nature. We are confronted with the task of protecting our country's unique but endangered biodiversity, pursuing a kind of development that has genuine regard for our natural resources has never become more crucial than today. In order to keep our planet healthy, livable, and sustainable, we must all work together. We are in the beginning of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a decade devoted to rapid action to address the prevailing threats to our environment and ecosystems. Now is the time to renew our pledge, to save our people and our planet, and to pursue progress in the right way. I am confident and hopeful that the conference we commence today will make our learners, our youth, into forerunners of change and innovation that we seek today and in the decades to come. Congratulations and more power to our young learners and our dedicated educators in DepEd. Thank you.
Thank you for your encouraging message, Secretary Manuel de Guzman.
I am already excited to learn about the biodiversity and climate change. May we now present our keynote speaker for today, Mr. Gab Mejia. Mr. Gab Mejia is a Filipino conservation photographer, environmental storyteller, and engineer. His work focuses on the stories on the climate crisis, endangered wildlife, and the intersectionality of culture and the environment. He is a National Geographic Explorer, Nikon Asia Ambassador, and an Emerging League Fellow in the International League of Conservation Photographers, and has published stories in National Geographic, Nikon, Worldwide Fund for Nature, United Nations Development Program, CNN Philippines, and other international platforms. Honored in the Forbes Under 30 Asia list, he is also a 2019 Jackson Wild Media Lab Fellow and a columnist for the Manila Times, having presented several stories on TEDx Talks for his passion for nature and the arts. He now resides as the youngest Board of Trustee for the WWF Philippines, working on conservation efforts on the Philippines. He will talk about reinforcing the youth's role in stewardship of biodiversity for climate stability. Take it away, Sir Gab.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gab Mejia, and thank you so much for having me here. Today, I will be talking about the importance of biodiversity and how we can contribute as youth in protecting our climate and facing the many impacts of climate change. Before anything else, I'd like to personally introduce myself. My name is Gab Mejia, and I am a conservation photographer and environmental storyteller. And basically, this is what it looks like on the field. I go to the front lines of our environments, our remote landscapes, and different ecosystems in order to capture the stories of the climate crisis, cultures and traditions, disempowered communities, and our critically endangered wildlife, everything that makes up nature. And usually, a time in the field we would be spending in, sleeping in tree houses, eating pancit canton, or getting our boots and shoes muddy, or having leeches surrounded your legs, or even sometimes going to the most far-flung places on this planet, hiking up with frozen boots on snow and ice. But I realized that being a conservation photographer and the stories that we tell, we really need to create and make meaningful interactions in order to truly connect with nature. And this job has truly been fulfilling, and being able to, see the most amazing migratory birds come flying in from the corners of Russia and Japan down to the Agusan Marsh in the Philippines. And even in journeys, camping and sleeping under the galaxies and stars of the Milky Way, in one of the most remote deserts in the United States, or even seeing, the amazing and exotic, eccentric creatures like this Arabian oryx found in the Arabian desert, an endangered species that once fell to the brink of extinction. And of course, even animals and biodiversity that resemble us, primates, that makes us realize that we can look similar to the creatures and animals that we find around our planet. And even looking up and soaring in the skies like these amazing Brahmini kites, raptors flying in the horizon, flying in the clouds, making us look up into the skies. And of course, no other than our amazing and alien-looking like creatures like this Philippine tarchik that is found in the island of Bohol and some parts of the regions of Mindanao. But aside from seeing all these beautiful creatures, about going to these different remote places and exploring the beautiful world around me, one thing that I realized going onto the field are the realities that we share and that they share as well. I spent the past 2 years documenting the impacts of climate change in Mindanao and the Agusan marshlands, the largest wetland in the Philippines. And the realities are here, the tragic realities of the impacts of droughts, of climate-induced droughts, to the places where migratory birds call this place home, to the people who are surrounding the local communities surrounding, and of course the many wildlife, the plants and trees that are destroyed throughout the process. It's actually one of the most traumatic experiences to witness the effects of climate crisis. But I realized also, that we, the youth, have so much power in being able to regenerate and bring back the forests that we once lost. These creatures, of course, that are affected and impacted, seeing kind of death face to face, and seeing critically endangered species at the brink of extinction. But if there's one thing that I learned out the field of seeing both the different nuances, of seeing both the beauty and fragility of our ecosystems and our amazing and important wildlife, is that we as humans have to act now. That we as a generation, as part of the youth, to truly act now. And there are so many ways that we can do to ensuring and protecting our endangered species and making sure that our biodiversity thrives. And one of this is by protecting the people who protect the ecosystems, protecting the animals that we have. Here you have in this photo are the Tamaraw Rangers, the passionate and inspiring Tamaraw Rangers who have dedicated their lives, years, and sacrificing their time with their family to spend hours and days patrolling Mount Piglit-Bako in Mindoro Occidental, where the Tamaraw is found. And the Tamaraw is one of the most iconic species in the Philippines, with about 500 individual lefts in the wild, and nowhere else can be found in the entire planet. These are our heroes, the people whose voices and work that need to be amplified and supported. And as part of the youth, where we have the power of the voice, of using social media, of using our own talents and potentials and abilities, we can make it work in making sure that these people have the power and have the voice to to make sure that people are aware about the issues of biodiversity and how we can ensure the protection and conservation of not just the Tamaraw, but of also their families and the future generations that all depend on biodiversity. I remember documenting a very traumatic experience last year in October 2020. This is the photo of Kalibasi, the last captive bred Tamaraw on the entire planet, who passed away last year. And it was happening during a pandemic, a very precarious and uncertain moment in the time when the economic impacts have left the Tamaraw Rangers to be threatened from their jobs, to be kicked out of their jobs, to be fired from their jobs of protecting Kalibasi. But it was the stories of the Tamaraw Rangers, and for example, this photo, Dr. Miko Reyes, who have shown the connectedness that they have. That even if they don't have enough or don't have surplus or don't have the most grand and luxurious things, you can see the passion and dedication, the connection that they built throughout the years in protecting a creature that somehow does not speak, an animal that is only found in this island. And sometimes we question what is the significance of protecting biodiversity, because these people realize that by protecting biodiversity, they just don't protect the animals. They also protect themselves, and they also protect the people, their families, who all thrive on biodiversity. The climate that we have, the clothes that we wear, the water that we drink, the food that we eat, all of it depends on biodiversity. And sometimes you question, like, is there still hope? Extinction is here. The climate crisis is here. The threats are here. The impacts of the climate change is here. But I do believe that there is hope when we work together, as a generation, and of course, the generations before us and after us, all working together to collaborate in bringing the Tamaraws and all the other biodiversity and species that we have all around our planet back to life, back to the beauty it once was. Through the stories that we tell, I realize the power of storytelling as an individual, as a person, that we can actually create ripples of change in making sure a whole entire species and the people who protect them are put on a secured path. We work on this campaign together for Tamaraws with the United Nations Development Program and the Biodiversity Finance Initiative. We were able to raise about $32,000 US, or about 1.2 million pesos, in making sure that the livelihoods of the Tamaraws would be secured for the future, that no more threats of pandemics or economic inequalities or social injustices would affect and impact them, hopefully for the long run. Because there's truth and power on biodiversity. And realizing this, I also realize how it all really depends on protecting the people, the indigenous communities, the disempowered minorities and local communities who also have dedicated their lives. Here in this photo is Ate Marites Babanto, a woman indigenous leader of the Manobo tribe in the Agusan marshlands in the Agusan del Sur. She has dedicated 20 to 30 years of her life protecting the marsh, as someone who has been connected with this vast landscape of rivers and lakes, protecting one of the migratory hotspots, a biodiversity hotspot found in the Philippines. And you realize that there is hope, there's light in protecting people, because biodiversity is all about not just people, but our shared and interconnected stories of life, of beauty, of fragility, of conflicts, all making sure that people know about them and that people can relate to them. Because in truth, if we want to stop the climate crisis, if we want to protect our wildlife, it starts by protecting the people who have been so connected with them. By protecting our people, we protect our wildlife. And protecting our wildlife means protecting our climate. It is a circle. It is a holistic kind of viewpoint in making sure that the youth knows about this. That we just can't talk about protecting the Philippine eagle if we don't help and support the Philippine Eagle Foundation. And we just can't say that we're helping protect the tarsier from the extinction or the tamaraw from extinction if we don't make sure that the local communities who may not be directly working in the conservation groups are being protected, are being given their needs, are being given the justice that they deserve, the future that we all deserve from this planet. And we don't have to go so far in exploring Mindoro or even Agusan. It can start in your own backyard by going out there and making sure that there are stories out there that we as a Filipino community, as a nation, would be able to bring out. And the whimsical stories of not just the rarest animals, but also of stories of people who are maybe in your local province, in your local barangay, in your local community, who actually have an inspiring story to tell that needs to be brought out to this world. Because it's truth, these creatures that we see, the biodiversity that we have, that we should be proud of as a Filipino, as one of the mega biodiverse countries in our planet. We should amplify their voices, because there is soul in seeing, like, for example, this Philippine eagle stare into your eyes and tell you, we are important too. And we are a symbol of your country. And I hope that you are proud of us. And I hope that you are proud of us to protect us and protect the people who are protecting us. And I think that is the greatest lesson that we can have in making sure where we can start if we want to protect the biodiversity amidst the climate crisis, is by realizing that we as a Filipino community, that we as a nation have so much to hold on to, that we have so much to protect and conserve, not just the animals, but even going down underwater to the deepest trenches, all the way to the highest mountains, and protecting the people, the indigenous communities, and the underserved local communities who need their story out there. For they are the environmental frontliners out there. It's not me. I'm just here to document the stories. But the environmental frontliners, these environmental defenders, are the ones that have the real stories out there that needs to be brought out to the world, and making sure that the Filipino community is important, that these ecosystems, the places, the rice terraces, the mountains and reefs that we all depend on are important. And I hope that in hoping for the betterment of the future, of the betterment amidst the climate crisis, for the betterment of biodiversity, we can only hope if we act. For there is no hope without impact. And it starts with us making sure to take that step and being able to share these stories and amplify these stories. There is power in storytelling for biodiversity. The power in you to have the talents and abilities on your own. You don't have to be a photographer. You don't have to be a visual storyteller. You can do it on your own terms. You can do it on your own careers. As a doctor, maybe helping, provide healthcare and protecting and making sure that people in the communities are well and not sick. You can even be an engineer, working in the construction industry and making sure that the buildings that you build are sustainably made and follow the rules and policies that we have, not encroaching on forested lands, not encroaching on protected areas. Because then you start realizing that all of it is interconnected, all of the jobs that we have, because there's no social justice, there's no environmental justice, and there's no social justice involved. And we can start in our own ways to providing that hope, to making sure that we will act and that we will make a difference in the animals, the people, the flora and fauna that we have in the Philippines and beyond. And with that, I'd like to end in sharing you this short video of how we can truly connect to nature, of how we can connect to ourselves and healing ourselves to make sure that we protect those in need. connect to nature, and make sure that our biodiversity, our people, and our planet, our climate gets the future that we all deserve. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned something.
Yes, we will surely follow the ways in how to contribute in our planet in protecting it.
And it's our to youth can help in their own perspective ways and simple but yet purposeful. Just like what Sir Gab said, we can contribute to environment and to our planet because the future of our planet and the young generations or the next generations depends on us.
Thank you for that inspiring talk, Sir Gab. It is important now more than ever that we focus our time, talent, and resources to protect one of our greatest treasures, our biodiversity.
We hope you're all doing well at home. Now, let's answer some of your questions from the DepEd Facebook page. Please include your name, officer, school, and division along with your comments or questions.
For our first question, what is the importance of biodiversity?
Hi, Lovelin. Yeah, the importance of biodiversity, as I've mentioned, that biodiversity is life itself. And some people think biodiversity is just rare animals like the Philippine eagle or the tamarau or the tarsier. But again, it's not. Biodiversity is everything from the clothes that we wear, where it's made from, the paper that we write, the batteries of our computers and laptops that we watch on, our cell phones, all the way to the water that we drink. And without biodiversity, we won't have any of these. We won't have all the things that we have now. We won't have all the needs that we have now to survive. And if people don't realize that biodiversity is everything that we have and will ever have, then the climate crisis, all the threats, the environmental issues that we're facing will get worse. So the importance of biodiversity is basically about survival, about the survival of our species, about the survival of our families, our friends, our children, everyone around us, everyone in watching this this conference, and everyone in the Zoom call, everyone. That is the importance of biodiversity. So if you don't think biodiversity is important, then maybe you don't think yourself or your communities as important as well.
Thank you, Sir Gab.
See the copy of the questions. Can you please read Labilin the second questions? I cannot see the copy of the question here.
For our second question,
Thank you.
For our second question, Sir Gab, how can we contribute as youth in protecting our biodiversity?
As mentioned, the youth have so much passion, so much energy that we can harness, so much energy that we can use for social good, for social justice. And one of the ways that you can do is by going volunteering with environmental organizations, sharing on social media, making sure people are aware about the issues facing our wildlife, our flora and fauna, sharing about issues of the climate crisis. These are small things, but another way, I think the greatest way is by mobilizing together, by working together, by collaborating with the connections that you have, the industries that you're working in, because everyone in the youth has different potentials, right? It's not just about photography. It's not just about writing or joining environmental organizations. It's also about the work and career that you do and how you make sure that what career you're going into, may it be as a doctor, as a teacher, as an engineer, you embody that sense of environmentalism. Environmentalism is more about not just like as a career, or it's not just a job, but it's also a kind of a philosophy, a lifestyle in your life that you should embody every day. For these individual actions will impact biodiversity in one way. It could be, again, like, by eating whatever you eat, whatever clothes that you wear, wherever you go, how you travel. There's so many ways that you have impacts on biodiversity, because everything is interconnected. All the jobs, all the lives, all our families are all interconnected with biodiversity and nature.
Thank you, Sir Gab. For our third question, what can we do to help strengthen the awareness in biodiversity conservation?
One way, one is you could start actually following environmental organizations. You have so many in the Philippines, like the Philippine Eagle Foundation, Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines, or WWF Philippines. You have the Mabuaya Foundation for the Philippine Crocodile. You have the Tarsier, you have the Center for Sustainability in Palawan. There's so many environmental organizations in the Philippines that are actually, putting out scientific data. They're putting out posters. They're putting out infographics that you can share on your social media. Because right now in the pandemic, I know it's super difficult to go out, and maybe the tools and making sure that you have, the tools, the capacity to be able to share these things right now is also so important, because you want to make the information that's being put out there about biodiversity, about their environment, to continue on, to last on, and making sure that you can also do this by creating your own initiatives, starting out your own environmental advocacy. If you want to focus on plastic issues, if you want to focus on biodiversity conservation, if you want to focus on protecting rangers or wildlife rangers, there's so many ways. And even you can even go on, by telling your parents, working on fundraising campaigns, making sure that you can work on supporting the communities or supporting the local organizations that are already working for biodiversity.
And then the next question. What do you think are the drivers in successfully conserving and protecting the biodiversity in our country?
One of the major drivers for the destruction of biodiversity. Well, one of the major drivers of the destruction of biodiversity is habitat destruction. When we destroy natural parks, when we destroy their homes, the habitats where biodiversity lives. So these drivers can really come in different forms, from like companies, corporations, who are exhausting our natural resources. Getting more and more than what they should take, right? Destroying. You would see these in different palm oil plantations, but like the drivers that can be able to protect and conserve the biodiversity to mitigate these threats. We have a lot of policies actually, like the NEPAS Act, where you have the national protected area, and you also have like regulations and agencies like the DNR, like the Protected Area Management Board, that all cater to enforce the laws, the environmental regulations. And we have so many acts as well. The Philippines has a lot of environmental policies, like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, that allows us to kind of protect the water, the rivers, the lakes, and also even the air that we breathe. And this is all part of biodiversity because the air, the water that we drink come from the ocean, come from the rivers, the wetlands, come from the forests, right? So by making sure that the enforcement of these policies are actually happening, that are promulgated on the different local levels and also the national levels, then that's when we can ensure that we can successfully conserve the biodiversity. For example, like the tamaraws before in the early 1900s, the tamaraw in the 1950s, the tamaraw population was about 20,000 in Mindoro. And because of the drivers of a disease, a rinderpest invasive disease that killed off, and poachers that killed off the population of tamaraws, it went down to as low as 200. So imagine from 20,000 tamaraws to 200. And what happened is that you have policies involved that allowed to make sure that the tamaraw is declared as a critically endangered species and became a national land mammal, one of a symbol. It was in the 1 peso coin before. And you have all these conservation organizations working together, from WWF Philippines, from the Tamaraw Conservation Program, the Tamaraw Rangers, who has been supported throughout the decades of protecting the tamaraw. And they were able to double the population up to 500 until today. So imagine, if we keep doing these and we actually, strengthen this more and supporting these environmental organizations, then we will have not just 500, but 1,000, and from 1,000 to 2,000 tamaraws. So there are small ways that we can do, and I think this is one of the drivers for successfully conserving and protecting our biodiversity. If we have the local communities involved, if we have the policies enforced, and if we have people aware about all these issues and all working together for it.
Okay, here's a question from Mikaela from Imus, Cavite. Could you suggest a state policy that would protect the biodiversity in the Philippines?
So we have actual policies like in the NIPAS Act again, that protects the habitats where these endangered animals live, where our wildlife lives. But you also have other supporting acts and resolutions from, for example, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity that make sure that we reach the targets of conserving our biodiversity. Because the Philippines is, again, one of the most mega biodiverse countries in our entire planet. So basically, we are special. We have a lot of natural resources with biodiversity. But we're actually one of the countries that are kind of not doing well in reaching these targets. And you also have a lot of acts like the Indigenous People Act, wherein you want to protect the local communities, protecting the biodiversity that they have, because they have already this interconnected shared values with the homes that they have. They've been protecting the places where they live. They coexist with these places, and if by supporting these communities, they will continue to protect these places, right, where the animals and the flora and fauna that we have live.
So I guess that's it for our questions. Thank you for everyone's thoughts. It will surely contribute to the healthy discussion regarding climate stability and biodiversity.
At this point, we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Mr. Gab Mejia for gracing our event.
This certificate of appreciation is awarded to Mr. Jose Mejia in recognition of their invaluable effort as a key speaker in the opening ceremony of the National Conference, with the theme reinforcing the youth's role on stewardship of biodiversity on 19th November 2021. Signed by Director Renelda Arco, Director of DepEd-RS. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gab Mejia. So at this point, let us now proceed to the next part of our program. We will now hear from the three brave learners. Let's listen to their real-life experiences in raising awareness of climate change and creating concrete climate action in the community. The first climate advocate is a grade 5 student of Dipolog Pilot Demonstration School, Division of Dipolog City, Region 9, Kuya Brent Cadavedo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gab Mejia, and thank you so much for having me here. Today, I will be talking about the important.
4 years ago, when I was in grade 1, every time I went to school, I couldn't help but notice a lot of things. I could see smoke bellowing from cars, light gray clouds turning to dark gray, but things were progressing around me. There were also mini floods. Little me was very happy to get school cancelled so I didn't have to go to school. You know, kids, when there's no school, they get all excited and that stuff. But what I didn't know was the harsh reality of what was happening around me. But sometimes, I couldn't help but wonder to myself, what if this persists in the following decades? Or what would happen if this continues frequently? Something like that. But that was until my grade 4. One of the teachers in our section suggested that I would join this Change the Current training program for young online learners. It was then I learned what would happen to the world if our climate crisis would persist for over decades and decades. Climate change is one of the biggest global crises the world is facing right now. And it's affecting people from all over the world. But what it's affecting most is the youth and biodiversity. The youth play an important role in turning climate change around. A child that is told to help our climate will most likely grow up to become a climate change advocate and help our climate out. All of us, and most importantly the youth, have an opportunity to tackle this crisis before it's too late. That means taking decisive action to cut greenhouse gas emissions and to ultimately stop and halt the advance of climate change, which also means to listen to the voices of children and young people who, for better or worse, will inherit the planet we share, but to also protect rare species and habitats from calamities. Statistics say that 200 to 2,000 species go extinct every year. Can you believe that? This biodiversity loss isn't just a tragedy. It's one of the biggest problems we face. Without biodiversity, the world as we know it wouldn't work. Everyone and everything is a component in the global network. A less wild world equals a world that can't provide our needs. Biodiversity equals stability, and stability is what we need the most of all. Now, when I was enlightened on how climate change could affect us, I was inspired on how proposals can affect us in the long run. I decided to go for, let's say, a much simpler and softer way of helping the climate. Education. Education can really help to shape the minds of the future. So why not use it for good? Information is power. There are opportunities for us to develop our understanding of sustainable development even within our school curriculum. Biodiversity will also be protected if we work together to stop climate change. I am Brent I.C. Sanchez Cadavedo, your 10-year-old climate change warrior, and it's time for you to raise your voice and tell us your climate change story. Thank you.
I'm back, and thank you, Brent. Your discussion about biodiversity is something that enlightens us. I really like the part where you said how powerful education is in learning biodiversity.
And I like also the part you said that youth play an important role in our environment because as we all know, we have a moral responsibility to our environment and planet. So in that way, we should take care and preserve Mother Earth. Thank you, Brent. Our second climate advocate is a grade 12 student of Malungon National High School, Division of Sarangani, Region 12, Ate Ruth Cortez.
Isa ang climate change sa pinaka-nakaka-alarmang issue sa ngayon. Sa totoo lang, kung tayo ay manunood ng videos sa YouTube o magsisearch sa Google, matatakot na lang talaga tayo. Maging tayo ay nararamdaman na rin ang pagbabago ng panahon. Kaya naman, bilang isang kabataan, ano ang magagawa mo upang masolusyonan ito? Hi! Magandang araw. Ako nga pala si Ruth Cortez, isang membro ng IP Group na taga-Kaulo, grade 12 STEM student ng Malungon National High School at kasapi ng Junior Quick Response Team at Education Advocate Representative ng Malungon Youth Movement. Isa rin sa advokasya na aking pinagtutuunan ng pansin ang patungkol sa SDG 13 o Climate Action. Hayaan niyo po akong ibahagi ang aking kwento bilang isang IT na nangangarap na mabigyan ng atensyon na mapangalagaan ang ating kalikasan. Ito ay ang Project Saka, sama-samang kabataan para sa karunungan, sa kalusugan, sa kahandaan at sa kalikasan. Ang Project Saka ay proyekto ng mga grupo ng kabataan sa Malungon at kasama po ako doon. Ito ay naglalayong tumulong sa mga mamamayan, lalo na sa mga kabataan, sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay impormasyon at gawing handa ang mga tao sa anumang sakuna. Taong 2019, ako kasama ang Malungon Youth Movement at Junior Quick Response Team ng Malungon National High School ay napiling umakyat sa Sitio Dalamuan, Barangay Lutay, Malungon, Sarangani Province. Ang lugar na ito ay kabilang sa GIDA o Geographically Isolated and Disadvantaged Area ng aming munisipyo. Ito rin ay tinaguriang risk area o nasa red zone ng aming Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Pinili namin ang Dalamuan dahil mas prone po ang lugar na ito sa landslide. Bit-bit ang kaalaman at materyales sa pagbigay impormasyon ay nakarating kami sa patutunguhan. Handog namin ang kaalaman patungkol sa first aid, basic rescue technique, mga dapat gawin kapag may sunog, lindol at iba pa. Kasi po, ito po yung kasagsagan ng lindol sa Mindanao na lubhang nakaapekto sa amin. Maliban sa impormasyon, training at seminar ay nagdala rin kami ng mga punong kahoy upang itanim sa mga malilihis na lugar upang ito ay maproteksyonan laban sa mga pwedeng mangyari sa lugar na ito. Gusto ko lang pong idagdag na maliban dito, ang Project Saka ay naglalayon din na matulungan ang mga pamilya at kabataan sa mga far-flung areas sa aming lugar. Kami po ay nagbibigay ng mga hygiene kits, first aid kits, school supplies, goods. Tinuturuan din namin silang gumawa ng face mask na maaari nilang magamit ngayong pandemic. Nag-conduct din kami ng parent mentoring patungkol sa teenage pregnancy at iba pa. Nakapagpagawa din kami ng bahay para sa isang pamilya sa pamamagitan ng bayanihan. Ang pagtulong sa mga tao, lalo na sa kalikasan, ay sobrang nakakataba ng puso. Lubos ang aking pasasalamat dahil sa mura kong edad ay nabigyan ako ng pagkakataon na makatulong. Gusto kong tumulong ng walang hinihinging kapalit. Kung kaya't kahit maglakad pa ng ilang oras para lang marating ang bundok, ay kakayanin ko at ng aking kasamahan sa grupo. Sa bawat bundok na aming naakyat ay iba't ibang kwento ang aking nalaman na siyang pumukaw sa aking damdamin. Ang mga karanasan ko dito ay nagturo sa akin na kahit sino ay kayang magbigay ng ambag para sa ikauunlad ng ating bayan at maging ng ating kalikasan. Bilang isang membro ng tribo, Ako ay nagpapatunay dito. Kaya ng kabataan na makibahagi at maging katuwang ng ating pamahalaan sa anumang suliranin na kinakaharap ng ating bayan. Ang climate change ay isyu na kailangan natin pagtuunan ng pansin. Huwag po natin basta lang pag-usapan ito. Bagkos, gumawa tayo ng aksyon upang masolusyonan ito. Lubos po akong naniniwala na ang kabataan ay di lamang ang pag-asa ng kinabukasan ng bayan. Ang kabataan mismo ang kinabukasan. Abante Rehiyon 12, Sulong Sarangani, Subida Malungon, Angat, Pilipinas.
Thank you, Ate Ruth, for sharing to us that worthwhile project in pursuing our Mother Earth, and your help to educate the youth on what to do when disaster hits. Project Saka is indeed a platform routine of evaluation.
And isa sa mga pumukaw talaga sa akin ay yung part na sinabi nyo na nagpatayo kayo ng isang bahay para isang pamilya. Napakalaking tulong nun. Lalo na ang Project Saka na talagang tinutulungan yung mga nasa mountain areas. At saludo ako sa iyo. Saludo ako sa iyo. Thank you once again, Ate Ruth Cortez. Our third climate advocate is a grade 10 student of Pasig National High School, Division of Pasig City, Region 6, Kuya Chaten Bayon Abrera.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to each one of you. I am Chaten Bayon Pastrana Abrera, an aspiring climate activist and child rights advocate from Pasig City, Iloilo, Philippines. I'm working currently as the male child representative of the Regional Subcommittee for the Welfare of Children, Region 6, and I'm also a member of Red Alert campaign of Save the Children, which is a child and youth-led campaign to call the attention of our leaders at the national, regional, and international level to do everything necessary to address the climate crisis. And this was created by Save the Children to provide platform for the young people in order for their voices to be heard. And I became a member of this campaign last year, and it's been a year already actually. The platform allowed me to gain more exposure to issues and concerns associated with climate change. I've been able to talk, work, and coordinate with young leaders from different countries and continents. It allowed me to share my views, ideas, opinions with other people, and at the same time, I can also learn from them about their situation, the way their government respond to climate change, and how they utilize social media in the mitigation of climate change, in climate change mitigation. The virtual platforms such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams allowed us to work with different people no matter where they are right now, which unlike back then where we really have or had to meet face to face. And the ability of us to meet virtually give us more opportunity to gather different views from young people, including me, and it is significantly more eco-friendly as well. And one of the things that we do in the campaign is that we are taking advantage of the events that are celebrated globally, such as, for example, the World Sustainability Day, World Environmental Day, Earth Hour, and COP26, which happened just recently. I, together with my colleagues, plan, talk, and decide if in which certain events we should be focusing more. If we think it is more important, and if we became part of that event, it can create a huge impact. And also, how are we going to take part in the event? In what way? How can we deliver our voices? And as a result, what we usually do is we create video messages, campaign messages, and one of the most important target participants of these messages are, of course, leaders. Because our leaders are one of the most influential and powerful group of people in the society. They can create laws and regulation for the protection of the environment. they can control industries and companies to limit their greenhouse gas emissions, and they can also influence people, and particularly the young people, and as well as the older generation who does not have like a good idea of what really climate change is. And Save the Children also allows children to raise their voices through art projects such as posters, slogans, and placards, and I was also able to participate in some of those. We have been using social media too to raise awareness about climate change. These video projects and art projects are being shared through Facebook stories, Instagram stories, Facebook news feeds, social media platforms, and other social media platforms such as Twitters as well. Because in 2021, according to statistic, about 4.48 billion people right now are using social media, or who are an active user of social media. And looking at that, we can conclude that social media is a powerful platform nowadays. It can surely create a massive change or cause a massive change, especially if we coordinate with leaders and other influential people such as actresses, actors, because these people have a huge number of followers. And another beauty of the Red Alert campaign is that since there are different young leaders, we are also sharing information about our campaigns, updates, and projects that are sometimes already outside of the Red Alert campaign or the advocacy of Save the Children. Actually, I have attended seminars and conferences that are conducted or shared by my colleagues. I remember one time that I attended Bangladesh UK Youth Voices on Climate Action and Youth for Climate Adaptation Workshop COP in Bogota. I am really glad and thankful that I was able to work with completely another new set of people and learn how their countries respond to climate change, in which I think we can also apply within our own community. The Red Alert campaign also allowed young people like me to have conversation with journalists from a established media company who can surely bring our voices to the masses. There were two virtual meetings recently wherein in the first one, young leaders including me shared our insights, experiences about climate change and the way our country respond to climate change, and what are the things that our leaders should prioritize. And we also had to answer questions as well from the journalists. In the second one, I have an interview with SBS TV Australia, and the topic revolves around the situation of the Australia in the way they mitigate the impact of climate change. How do I feel about their climate change mitigation? And the interviewer asked me how do I feel about their governments, and we also have like a comparison between our country and Australia in the way we utilize renewable energy sources and the education in the Philippines. It was such a healthy conversation and a good conversation. I have learned that all of us are having the same problem, and that is having some corrupt politicians who are incapable, who are ignorant about the prevailing issues existing within our community, that is not just limited to climate change. Because to accomplish our goal of having a sustainable future, we need to have a leader that is not there for for a money or for a profit, for corruption, but a leader who can fulfill his or her promises to the people, and a leader who views climate change as a crisis and not as a conspiracy theory. I am really grateful that Save the Children created this campaign where young people are working hand in hand to create a huge impact and can influence people, especially our leaders. It is already time to respect the voices of the young people because we are also part of the society. We are not just making random statements. Because in fact, we are not just affected by any prevailing issues existing within our community, but we are the most vulnerable and affected, even though being the least contributor to climate change.
Thank you, Chat and Beyond. Social media is indeed a powerful platform for the young people to also share their ideas on how to address issues and concerns about climate change. You have proven that the young generation has the power to change the world for the betterment of the future generation. Thank you for leading the youth in advertising good cause for the world.
Thank you then for using social media as a platform, just like what Lavelin said, that it's a platform in promoting climate change and environmental awareness for each and everyone para aware sila sa kung ano pa yung maibabahagi natin bilang kabataan. Because as youth, we have the power. Our voice matters and our life matters also. We have to act now because, as I said, the future of the future generation is dependent on us. So thank you. Good job, Chaten. We hope you're doing well at home. Now let's answer some of your questions from the DepEd Facebook page. Please include your name, officer, school, and division along with your comments or questions.
Okay, for our first question, paano nyo nababalance ang studies and climate action? May we ask our speakers?
Hello. Can I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Sure.
So, as a student talaga, medyo nahihirapan talaga ako mag-balance between sa work ko sa organization dahil hindi lang talaga ako nag-work as a climate activist dito sa Red Alert campaign ng Save the Children. But I also work as a child rights advocate with regional subcommittee for the welfare of children at saka meron din ako advocacy dito sa Child Rights Network. At minsan may mga event din mula sa ibang organization kagaya nga ng RJJWC at CWC. Ang problem na palagi kong na-encounter ay pagdating sa time management, no. Even though I'm trying my best to have a very good time management, meron talaga time na hindi mo talaga mamimit yung expectation. And para sa akin, it's okay lang, no? It's a challenge for me. Yun nga, no? Pero I'm trying my best talaga. And paano ko nako-cope up yung stress sa ginagawa ko? So, I always prioritize my mental health and both pati yung physical health ko over my yung mga organization o tsaka sa education dahil yun nga, no, mas importante talaga yung ating health kasi once it deteriorated, hindi na natin to ma-replace. And don't pressure yourself, no, take a rest from a while, no, dahil deserve natin. And yun lang po. It's all about having a good balance between your study, your advocacy, and your health.
Thank you, Thank you, Chaten. So the second question would be for Ate Ruth. Paano po kaya mapapagpatuloy kahit na madaming bad news? Paano po kaya kayo nagpapatuloy kahit madaming bad news? Ate Ruth?
Hi, good morning po sa lahat. Kahit po may mga bad news po, hindi po namin po iniisip yon. Pinagpapatuloy lang po namin kung ano yung ini-aim namin, yung advocacy namin kasi we want to help eh. Hindi na namin iniisip yung mga bad news kasi mas importante yung kung ano yung magagawa namin as a youth and paano kami makakatulong sa ating kalikasan po.
Thank you, Ate Ruth.
Here's a question from Rinzan Gonzalez of Division of Bulacan, one of our environmental journalists. What personal experience prompted you to that you needed to act now and advocate for change, Kuya Brent?
Thank you for that question, Loven. Actually, what inspired me to become a climate advocate is my surroundings. I think that's pretty cliche, but I know everyone might say that, but that's mainly what makes a climate change advocate is experience. What they see in their surroundings, what they see, what is changing in their surroundings. I really feel like that's what makes up a climate change advocate. So what really made me get inspired to become a climate advocate is my experience and what's happening in my surroundings. Thank you.
Okay. For you, how can the Filipino youth bring awareness on the current environmental issues that the Philippines face today? Thank you for all your questions. Young people are so inspiring, don't you think? So, John?
I must say, I know. Diba? Diba nga may saying tayo na children can be wise beyond their years. It just goes to show that young people are not just for the future, but they can do so much good in the here and now. For those who join us today, please answer the completion and evaluation form at the link in the screen. You may also scan the QR code. Please make sure to submit your correct name and email address since the certificate of participation will be sent to your email. The certificate will be released on or before the 3rd week of December.
This is just the start of our exciting week. Tomorrow, November 20, 2021 at 9 a.m., we will bring you the Ridge to Reef, a virtual field trip in partnership with Philippine Reed and Rainforest Conservation Foundation.
Tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, we will have an online talk show called Youth Can, wherein children interview experts in partnership with Climate Change Commission, Save the Children Philippines, and Plan International. Then by 5 p.m., we also encourage you to listen to the radio magazine shows developed by the Green Beat Initiative, an environmental journalist training for school paper advisors and campus journalists or TGBI participants in partnership with the Association of Young Environmental Journalists or AYEJ and World Vision Development Foundation Incorporated.
It will be immediately followed by our Kalikasan, Likha at Lakas ng Kabataan para sa Bayan, a theater production and climate action online training for high school students presentation called #Generation Hero Online Show in partnership with Comunidad X or KX and Save the Children Philippines or SCP.
Next week on November 21, Sunday, 9 a.m. in the morning, our topic will be Interfaith Stewardship, Dialogue in partnership with Living Laudato Si Philippines.
On November 22, Monday 9 a.m., we will hold the Let the Earth Be Heard online completion ceremony for the Green Beat Initiative by Association of Young Environmental Journalists and of Young Environmental Journalists and World Vision Development Foundation Incorporated. In the afternoon at 4 p.m., we will have the Kalikasan online completion ceremony by Comunidad X and Save the Children Philippines.
On November 24, Wednesday, we will hold the Teachers as Steward for Climate Action Forum with Worldwide Fund for Nature, Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative. In the afternoon, SIGA or School in the Garden, Revitalizing the Native Tree Forum with Bureau of Learner Support Services Youth Formation Division.
Lastly, on November 25, Thursday, we will have the Stories for a Better Normal episode 72 in partnership with Climate Change Commission and Office of the Deputy Speaker Legarda, to be followed by the Climate Change Adaptation and Mitigation Research Hour with Save the Children Philippines and the closing ceremony. All our activities are provided with Filipino Sign Language interpretation.
Please follow the DepEd Facebook page or bit.ly/5thNCCC for the details of our series of events. The 5th National Climate Change Conference is brought to you by the Department of Education through the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service.
It's our pleasure to join you in today's conference. Once again, I'm Ate Loveland.
And I'm Kuya John, signing off. Thank you.